Today is a wonderful day in Kingsport. We're importing another Greenville that's not even on a submarine coming up here. So this one that's coming in today, and I need to give credit where it's due because I said, hey, David Hawk, do you happen to have a connection and contacts for Alan Johnson? David said, well, I think I can get a hold of him. As it turns out, as I started researching it, had a lot of excitement and has been building. I grew up at the track in Bristol, Speedway and Dragway. My neighbor built it, and this is just getting ready for this. Is reliving old childhood memories and adulthood memories as well. So it is a pleasure today to have Alan Johnson as our speaker. Alan was the 2012 NHRA, National Hot Rod Association, Pro Staff World Champion. He got back out of racing and retired a little later in life. And then all of a sudden he decided that he wasn't quite through with that. So this past year, and as a matter of fact, just a couple of months ago in October, he became the first member of the Jessel 200 Mile an Hour Club in his dragster. Alan comes from a long line and family, and I'm going to let him tell you about his dad. His dad is still building engines for drag racers all over the world in a particular division. So he comes by it naturally. Alan's ambition for success provided the courage and motivation for his decision to move into the professional ranks of drag racing. Having competed in the sportsman's ranks since 1977, he was aware of the time and work it was needed to step up. With a full family support, the then 39-year-old owner and driver debuted the Johnson & Johnson Racing 1996 Dodge Avenger in the ATSCO Nationals in February of 1996, competing in the Pro Stock class. When he's not racing, you've seen him on television, that personality with the big marathon sign behind him. Alan owns and manages Greenville Oil and Petroleum, an oil business located in Greenville. And he's resided in the same town with his two daughters, Heather and Kim. Alan is a active member of the Greenville Chamber of Commerce, a representative of Amoco's National Board for the Children's Miracle Network, a member of the Board of Directors of TOMA, and a sponsor for youth organizations when not working or volunteering. So he fits right in with us, one child at a time. He enjoys, when he's not racing, he enjoys his Harley and golfing. His father Roy and wife Pam are responsible for him being with us today, and we are happy to say that they have done a good job. And without further ado, Alan Johnson, would you come up and pump these people?
Thank you, everybody, for having me. I was a member of the Kiwanis Club before I started racing professionally, so I was gone 30 weeks a year racing, so I had to drop out of the Kiwanis Club. I was never there. I guess I was on that naughty list back then. But anyway, just a short version of from 70s to present. I grew up in a racing family. My father raced dirt track at Kingsport in Johnson City, drag racing at 411 in Knoxville, English Mountain in Newport. I grew up playing in a wagon on the red clay bank down there at Newport watching him race. So I worked in the garage with him, learned how to work on cars, build engines. And around 1977, when I graduated high school, he gave me my own car. And him and I raced together on the sportsman level, but NHRA circuit all over. He had won 2 straight back-to-back championships in 75 and 76 in the sportsman ranks. And then in 79, I missed it by 5 points. me and the other guy named Deep Butner in Atlanta at the race, we were in the finals at the race down there, and whoever won that race was the Super Shock champion in IHRA that year. And when they called us to the line for the final race, I cranked the car and the crank broke. Missed it by 5 points as a 19-year-old. So the family just continued to do that. We were sponsored. My dad was sponsored back then by the Chrysler Corporation. And when they went bankrupt in 1981, he lost his sponsorship and we quit racing. And I'll never forget, I walked in the garage one day and he basically forced me out. He said, "You need to go get a college degree and make something of yourself." And, I went to school for 7 years. I was married and had a child on the way already. And I went to school for 7 years at ETSU at nights, 3 nights a week for 7 years, and got my accounting degree. And Bob Rotifer, which all y'all probably know from Greenville, he's CPA Rotifer Moss. He tried to recruit me out of accounting school, and I didn't ever want to be a CPA, a tax accountant. I was into the computer systems part of it, and he tried to hire me, and I wouldn't do it. So I don't know, a few weeks later he called me, and he said, "I got a gentleman by the name of Fred Myers owns Greenville Oil Company. He wants to computerize the company." So he got me and Fred together, and shoot, I went down there for probably 6 months. Me and him trying to work out a deal. The business fit me to a T because of my mechanical background, pumps and trucks and tanks, and my accounting background. I had what he wanted. So I went to work for him. I tell you what I did. I worked at Allergan Pharmaceuticals as their internal accountant down in Greenville, and I took 2 weeks off at Christmas, and I just showed up down there at Fred's one day at Greenville Oil. He said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm coming to work for you." He said, "Well, hell, I didn't hire you." But I was going to work a week and just see how it felt, and that was in 1989. So I worked for him. He wanted to semi-retire. I run the business for him for about 5 years, and he had a health problem, and he basically helped me buy the company from him. He didn't have any heirs that wanted to get in the business, so he helped me buy it from him. So that was in 94, end of 94. So something my dad had always wanted to do was race professionally in pro stock. And he never had the funding to do it. It takes millions of dollars annually to do it. And I got in the business for a couple of years, got fortunate, got lucky in business. And I went to my dad one day and I said, "Are you still wanting to race pro stock?" And he said, "Oh no, that costs way too much money. We don't need to do that." And I sort of leveraged Amoco at that time. If you want me to stay Amoco in the oil business, you're going to have to sponsor a race car for at least 3 years. So I put that deal together. Me and Dad went to Bristol before we decided totally. Went to Bristol to the IHRA race in 94, maybe 95. And a good friend of my dad's was Bob Glidden, who raced pro stock. He was one of the best pro stock racers ever. And we went in his trailer, and Dad said, "You need to talk some sense into this boy here. He wants to race pro stock." And Glidden jumped down and he said, "Are you crazier than hell? You might as well get a backhoe and dig a hole in the backyard and every day throw $5,000 in it." Which that's about what it's like. But we put a car in the jig later on that year and a big truck and got it built, and we made it to. We didn't make the first race in '96, but we made the second one in Phoenix. That was the second stop on the NHRA tour. And, we raced from '96 to retired in 2017. And during that time, my dad became one of the best engine builders in the world, highly respected, still doing it. He's 82. He's in the shop every day. He's got like 4 pro stock engines in there right now, working on them. Keeps him young. During that time, the first year, '96, when you go to a race, you have about 30 cars trying to qualify for 16 spots. So on Friday, you qualify twice. On Saturday, you qualify twice. If you make the top 16, you race on Sunday. In '96 and 24 races, we qualified one time. Trying to start out on our own, him doing his own engines. I mean, it's the way we wanted to do it, but it was tough. We traveled that whole year and qualified one dang time, and that ended up being one of my favorite tracks at Denver, Colorado. I was in 10 straight finals in Denver, Colorado, and won 7 of them my last 10 years of racing. So that was one of my favorite tracks. We just hit on a combination out there in that thin air up a mile high that really suited the Dodge Hemi engine that we used, and we kept that advantage all the way through until they changed the fuel injection, which ruined us. That's the reason I retired. But anyway, that's a short synopsis up until now. We got some videos and stuff to play. Anybody, before we do that, anybody have any questions about what I just talked about, or like to hear any more?
Where do you get your engine?
My dad, Chrysler Dodge, supplies the blocks and the heads, and we machine them, build them ourselves. My dad.
Factory engines?
No. Pro stock engines are not. Now the class I didn't mention this year. A guy. They come out with a new class this year called Factory Experimental, which is basically the old pro stock from the '80s. It's a supercharged engine, but the chassis is a street-looking car. I raced a Dodge Challenger, looked just like what you'd see sitting over in the parking lot this year. That's what I've done the 200-mile-an-hour deal with. But this new class, what they've done is tried to get the fan appeal back in pro stock. Pro stock's sort of like NASCAR. It's evolved to a point where all the cars look alike and lost a lot of appeal to the normal person out here on the street. So this new class, it's just like pro stock, 5-speed transmission. You have to shift going down the track, clutch, just like pro stock. And it really appealed to me, and I'd thought about maybe getting one of my old buddies that would build a car and race a couple times a year is what I thought I'd do. And a friend of mine who built a car crashed it in February and hurt him bad. He developed 2 brain bleeds and about died a month after he had the wreck. He was walking around for 3 weeks, hurt and didn't know it. But anyway, he didn't want to quit racing, but the doctor told him he had to. So he calls me one day and he said, "Man, this new class, it just fell right in my lap, like I'd sort of planned, and just raced 4 races this year. I was able to win 1, runner up, and 2 of the other 3. So we had a successful year. I'm not sure I'm going to do it again next year, but it was a lot of fun to do it this year. But if you watch NHRA, it's called Factory Experimental. It's Chevrolet Camaros, Ford Mustangs, and Dodge Challengers, and they look just like a street car. But they'll go 200 miles an hour in 6 seconds. So fun ride. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How many G's do you think you're holding that 6 seconds there?
Well, in first gear in the pro stock car, it's 4.5 G's through first gear. And then second gear, it goes down, down, down. And then when you pull the parachutes at the other end, it's 4 G's going this way. So it's a thrill. You wouldn't be able, until you got used to it, you wouldn't be able to breathe through probably 3 gears. It'd take your breath like a roller coaster. Yes, sir.
Who were some of the other competitors when you were racing?
Some of my main competitors, the champion this year and 4 out of the last 6 is a girl, Erica Enders. Really good friend of mine. I was able to pretty much be her mentor back when she started in the early 2000s. And my wife and her family, we're all very good friends and still spend a lot of time together. Greg Anderson, he's six-time champion. Older, retired before I did, Bob Glidden that I mentioned, Warren Johnson, Kurt Johnson, Mike Edwards. Mike Edwards was sponsored by Young Life, and I got involved in that because of his sponsorship. They used to bring kids out to the track, and it was a really neat deal. Greg's still competing. He's my age. He finished second in the championship to Erica this year. They had a battle there at the end. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. Yes, sir.
What's the long-term physical effects on your body from all that drag racing? Like, quarterback with a bad knee, things like
Huh? Ears. I mean, we wear protective equipment, but my wife says I can't hear a lick. But that's the body wise. You'll see a wreck I had. That was probably my first claim to fame. Lucky to be here. The Lord left me here for a reason. And a lot of people said, you better figure it out because he left you here for a reason because I would have been dead. But that wreck, still have a little problems with wrist, knee because I braced myself when I started wrecking and, affected that later on in life, I guess. But the overall effects like on your body, unless you have a wreck, are none other than probably hearing. Yes, ma'am.
So NASCAR kind of started in the South.
Uh-huh.
What about drag racing?
Drag racing started in the West, in California. That's NHRA's headquarters is in Glendora, California, still this day, and a guy by the name of Wally Parks started the NHRA. But you had Larry Carrier, who's his neighbor. He's passed away now, but Larry started. He was a big part of IHRA drag racing, which started right here in Bristol. Yes, sir.
Did you ever have a parachute knocked open, and what happened?
Well, I've had that happen a lot of times. First, the way the parachutes work, you have a launch system, bottle of compressed air, and if you don't turn that air on, that don't launch very well. So that air didn't get turned on a few times, and different things happen. But you learn as a driver how to stop the car from. I mean, the Pro Stock car we're going 215, and some tracks have pretty short shutdown, and you learn how to not panic and do that. The gentleman I was just talking about that crashed this year, it was his first time in this car. First pass down the track, a full pass, and his parachutes didn't open. And he panicked and locked the brakes up and hit the left wall head on and even knocked 10-foot section out. That was the new driver. He didn't have any experience. But as a driver, I've had him not open 100 times.
Did you ever hit the sand at the end?
Never went in the sand, but I went from side to side trying to stop.
Somebody wants to buy a Pro Stock engine. What does it run? And from a fuel standpoint, what kind of octane rating are you looking at?
The fuel, it's about 118 octane racing fuel, synthetic fuel. A Pro Stock engine, when I retired, I could have sold every one of my engines for probably $75,000 to $100,000, and we had 10 of them. Yes.
Did you or your dad ever race against Charlie Hunt?
Yeah, I know Charlie very well. He raced IHRA, called Mountain Motor Pro Stock. It's a different organization. But a good friend of mine, Tommy Lee, drove a car for Charlie. I know Charlie very well.
Now, you said you went 215 miles an hour. What's the fastest that you?
That's it. That was fastest I ever went was a 6:45. That's 6.45 seconds in a quarter mile at 215.45. That's the fastest I ever been. The record, the pro stock record is 6:44 with a 5 still. So I held the record for about 3 minutes. I run before the person that run behind me, and he topped mine. Two of them did.
This is in 1999 at Gainesville, Florida, and you can listen to him explain it.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Lowe's, and you're watching the NHRA Nitro Time Machine. We go back to the Gator Nationals in 1999 for this quick clip featuring pro stock racer Alan Johnson. For those of you that haven't seen it, Johnson suffers one of the worst pro stock crashes of all time at this race. See if you can count the barrel rolls. It's more than a dozen by my count, and it's incredible that he was able to walk away. Let's go back to 1999 and listen to the legendary call of this legendary crash.
Before we get into action, let's take a look back. It was in round number 1 earlier today. Alan Johnson was in the far lane against Greg Anderson in the near lane. Watch what happened to Alan and his Dodge Avenger. The Amoco car, totally out of control, began a series of very violent barrel rolls. Over and over and over again. Going high in the air, it finally bounced on top of the guardrail and oh so gently flipped over the guardrail lining the racetrack. From another angle, we get a chance to look at it again, the conclusion of this very violent accident involving Alan Johnson and the Amoco Avenger. It was truly one of the wildest rides since Bob Glidden did something very similar just about 10 years ago at Atlanta Dragway. Alan Johnson being extricated from the car by the medical staff and the NHRA safety safari, except for one wild ride and something he never wants to do again. Alan Johnson apparently A-OK.
You can see the pain in Alan Johnson's face by that grimace he had when they dragged him out of his bent and broken race car. Johnson would continue to race pro stock, becoming the 2012 NHRA Pro Stock World Champion about a decade after this wreck happened. He had a long and decorated career with many national event wins along the way. And if there's one thing I can promise you, he never forgot this particular day and that particular moment at Gainesville Raceway. We'll be back soon with more NHRA Nitro Time Machine action, probably back at the Gator Nationals.